Good morning, so welcome to my video about volcanoes. So what I'm going to do is today I'm going to talk you through what a volcano looks like, how we get volcanoes, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a creative task. We're going to make a volcano. You can do this using some of the things you've got around the home, which I'm going to try and show you later. Once we've made our volcano, then we delve into the science behind the explosions. We can look at 3 or 4 different ways in which we can create an explosion from our volcano, and we can test to see which one is the greatest, which one is the fastest. We can look at the reactions there and really get into this. So first things first, let's look at our volcano structure.
So before we go into too much detail about our volcano structure, we need to look at how did it get its shape? How do we identify everything on it? And where does the magma chamber come into it? So to do that, we need to take a little step back and we need to look at something that bases itself around the Earth structure. So let's take our Earth to start with. This is what we know the Earth looks like. Now, if I were to cut open the Earth, it's actually made up of loads of different layers, sort of like a Scotch egg or a cake, for example. So when I split it up, the Earth will look a little bit like this. It has an outer layer, which is called the crust. One layer below that, known as the mantle. This is where we will find our magma chambers. So this is the one that's particularly really interesting for us. Then we have the outer core and the inner core, both incredibly hot. But we're not looking that deep today. We're looking at the crust and the mantle. So we want to look at these 2 layers and what is happening there. So let's go back to our Earth structure. If we think about the Earth, everything on that crust, that outer layer that we're looking at, that's the water and the land mass, what happens is it's made up of something called plates. We call them tectonic plates. And what happens is they sort of fit together a little bit like a jigsaw. Okay, so this isn't exactly accurate. This is just to give you an idea of how it's all working. Now, some of these pieces will push away from one another. Some of these pieces will push towards one another. Now that's where we get some really interesting shapes in land mass, and we think about these like volcanoes, we think about mountain ranges, where we get rocks, where we've got trenches like the Mariana Trench. It's because these plates are all moving in different directions. So let's take a look at that structure and how that causes our volcano. Now if I have one plate moving towards another like this, they're both moving towards one another, what can happen is they can push against each other to create this big land mass that we know as a mountain, or the shape of a volcano, if you like there. That large sort of crater, that large mountainous landscape. They can push towards each other again, but this time something different can happen. What can happen is one of these plates can go below another one. And if it does this, it can apply pressure on things such as magma chambers. So we've seen over here that the magma is just below the crust. So when we're applying pressure from one plate onto the magma has nowhere else to go. So what happens is that magma shoots up in a great release of pressure. It will shoot up as much as it can, and this is when it breaks through and causes an eruption. Now in both cases, magma can feel pressured because the plates are still moving towards one another, and either way you can get an eruption happening. So we're going to have a look at those. There is one other way where you have plates moving towards one another, and you have these plates here moving away from one another. Now that can leave cracks within the crust, where again magma can escape, but when the magma cools, it creates new land mass. So let's have a little look. So at our volcano here, let's imagine these 2 plates are moving towards one another. Because they've done that, they've pushed each other up to create this volcanic cone shape, if you like. So we're going to need to understand the shape of our volcano and then be able to give a diagram, because I'm going to ask you later to look at a volcano of your choice and label and explain to me what you know about that volcano. So we're going to start with the basics. We have our landmass and our volcano shape here. We should know up here is where the crater is. We should know that down here is where our magma is. Remember, it's magma when it's inside the earth and it becomes lava when it's outside. So we have our magma chamber here. We will also have, when it starts to explode, up here you can see our main vent. And that is how the magma is going to escape. So we'll call this our main vent. Okay. You can have secondary vents if you like. So this is other places where the magma finds a way to erupt and break through the surface. But these are the most important parts that we need to know.
Okay, so now we've looked at our volcano structure, what we need to do is we need to make one. So I'm going to show you what I've got and how I'm going to make one. So I've just had to use some bits from around the house, so I'll save these for later when we're decorating it. So what I have my base. I need a base of my volcano because I need a structure for it to sit on. So I'm just using a bit of cardboard from packaging. Okay. Then I'm going to place that down. You can use any bottle, so you can make a big volcano or a small volcano. I only have a few small bottles, so I've gone for a smaller size volcano. So I'm going to use any plastic bottle. The idea of this, once you've made your volcano around it, is that you can put your reactants, your ingredients inside your bottle when your volcano is made. You can empty it out and then you can do another experiment with it. So the idea is that we have something to put the ingredients in. Otherwise your volcano becomes only a one-use volcano. So first of all, you need to glue the bottle to the base of the cardboard. So I'm going to use a glue gun. If you don't have a glue gun, just use a glue stick. It should be fine because we're going to secure it in later. Okay, so once that's on and it's firmly there, the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to build the structure of your volcano. So we've seen sort of the cone structure of the volcano from our diagram earlier. So to do that, all I've got some spare sort of paper bags that I use at home, and I have an old magazine. Okay, so this will be fine. Any sort of paper that you have will do. So you will either want to paper mache, or you might want to build the structure yourself. So I don't have any PVA glue here, so I'm going to build the structure myself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my cardboard and I'm going to roll, because rolling is a really mouldable shape. Once we've got that and we've got our tubes of newspaper, we are then going to be able to place them around the structure like so. And I'm going to show you that now. Okay, it doesn't matter how rough it looks. My volcano is made out of rock and cooled lava and magma, so I want it to look a little bit rough. I want it to look rocky. I want it to look a little bit volatile. So using this paper is really good because it's quite stiff. But if you have newspaper, try scrunching it a little to get that rocky texture. Okay, so now that'll do for my base structure. If I were using newspaper, again, I would have paper mache, taken my time a little bit more, and then managed to paint it white so I can start putting some colour on there. I don't have newspaper at the moment here, so what I do have is these white bags, like sandwich bags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these as my final layer so that it's going to be easier to paint. And we've got an idea of what that looks like. The first thing I want to do, first of all, I'm just going to tidy it up a little bit so that we can see our structure a little bit clearer. Now what I'm going to want to do is going to want to paint it. Okay. As you paint it, things will start to stick down, but you can paint the base, you can add some trees, you can add some animals, however you want to take it a step further and be a bit more creative. I think that's amazing. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to, first of all, look at a picture, look at the diagram we did earlier, and use this to help you when it comes to decorating your volcano. You want to make it as real as possible. If you can find a volcano that you researched earlier, then amazing. Use that one as a model. It's always helpful to have something to copy or to model our ideas on. So I'm going to go for a general dark brown at the moment. So these are the two colours that I have available at my house in my craft box. So I'm just going to mix up my brown. And later on I will try and label parts of my volcano once it's decorated. You'll need to decorate it and you'll need to give it time to dry as well. Don't forget that. So there's no rush. Okay, so now I have a sort of brownish colour. I'm just going to start dabbling. Remember, you don't want to stroke because then you won't get that rocky texture. You want that rocky texture. You've got this volatile volcano ready to explode. So try dabbing.